I have as my guest to review the new sounds, Rory Gallagher with Ann Nightingale. From the number 2 album in the album chart, this is Elvis Costello from Armed Forces. And every track's a winner, folks. From the album Armed Forces, Elvis Costello with the Attractions, and that was called Sunday's Best. It's been a while since we've heard from Rory Gallagher, and we're going to catch up as to what he's been up to in the last few months, years even, when he appears on the Roundtable in a few moments. But to give you an idea of what he's been recording recently, this is from a new 3-track EP release, and then from it, this is Shadow Play. Also from Rory's most recent album, Photo Finish, that's on a new 3-track EP release on Chrysalis Records, and that was called Shadow Play. And Tommy Vance will be playing something else from that 3-track EP a little later on the Friday Rock Show at 10 o'clock. One more to go, and then it's going to be the Roundtable. But here's a preview of my record of the week for next week is going to be. This is Wire, and it's called Outdoor Miner. That's Wire, and that's going to be my record of the week for next week, called Outdoor Miner. It's 6 o'clock. Indeed, welcome to the Roundtable on a Friday, and as I said moments ago, my guest tonight is, first of all, Rory Gallagher. Welcome to Radio 1.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, it's a long time no see, personally for me, because I first met you all of, 8-9 years ago, something with right. Taste, when you burst out of Ireland. A lot of water has passed under the old musical bridge. You've been doing some dates, haven't you, just recently?
Yeah, we're just sort of finishing off a British tour.
A new lineup for you?
Yeah, we've got a new drummer, Ted McKenna. He used to be with Alex Harvey's band, and bass player, Jerry McAvoy, is still the same bass player. And it's part of a sort of a semi-world tour where we get through the States and through Europe and Ireland and England. So we're just getting as much territory covered as possible. You know?
Good. I'm glad you found time to come here tonight, because you've just come from a sound check at a gig that you're going to be playing in London tonight, and then you're going to rush off to it afterwards. Annie, welcome. It's been all of a week since I last saw you.
All of 2 days, I think.
Yeah, something like that. Welcome back to the Roundtable.
Thank you.
You know what it's all about? I've got a pile of new records and some good new singles, too.
So you're awfully right about Wire.
So early in the new year. Oh, you like Wire, too?
Yeah.
Good. Well, I wonder what you make of this. It's Blondie, and their new release. It's a track from the Parallel Lines album on Chrysalis Records. This is Heart of Glass. Well, I've got a special reason for asking Rory first about that particular record, because I've got in my hand, you probably didn't know this, is a magazine called Cashbox, which is kind of a music industry magazine, and inside a recent edition of Cashbox is a picture of Rory Gallagher standing right next to Debbie Harry backstage in New York. What was that encounter all about?
I had the scars to prove it. Yeah, I went to see the Blondie for the first time, and it was quite good. Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels.
Are they still going?
Yeah, well, Mitch has been... I don't know, he went off the road for months and worked in a factory or something, or years, in fact.
Yeah.
So, I just went back and said hello, and...
Oh, that's good.
Saw the show. It was the first show of that kind I'd seen, and I saw Johnny Thunders on the same bill. But oddly enough, it's only in New York that Blondie is really a big success, or Cleveland, more of the big cities, the industrial cities. But it's quite a good show. It wasn't exactly what I'd call an emotional, sweaty show, but it was... that sort of icy feeling about the thing. But it was enjoyable as its own thing, you know.
Well, you make a lovely couple there. What do you think? What do you think of the single?
It's okay, but it sort of just washes away through your subconscious. It's not music to hit you in the heart or the soul or anything, but it's very much a record, tied up with the image, just that one glazy emotion, and. But it's a professional record, and it's a little bit like Kraftwerk's record, that sort of incessant razor blade sort of sound. But I'm sure it'll be a success.
Sure, because you said they're big in New York or Cleveland area of America, but in Britain they're very big, aren't they, Annie?
Yes, it's extraordinary, isn't it? The Blondie is so much bigger here than they are in America.
We talk about they, but we all think of her, Debbie Harry, as being such
rather than the band. I mean, they've always had, I think, without exception, lousy reviews for the concerts they've done over here, and I don't know whether it's amazing production or what they do in the studio that brings out really clever records. This, I think it gets you, I warn you, Rory, after a while.
Yes.
And I believe that the American import 12-inch has been doing incredibly well, so now that the proper single's out, I think it's going to have no trouble at all.
Right. I think I'll have to go along with that. It's the third single from their very successful album, Parallel Lines, Blondie, and Heart of Glass. This is Johnny Guitar Watson, and a remake of an old hit of his called Gangster of Love. Guy that's been making music for years and years and years. Johnny Guitar Watson. And that was Gangster of Love on the DJM label. As I said, a remake of an old song of his, Annie.
Well, it's very R&B-ish. I think more so than, more blatantly so in a lot of these things. And I don't know if I'm wishing it to happen, but what with lovely George Thorogood and Destroyers records and
excellent, yeah.
A new nice feel-good single, I keep thinking, well, it'd be nice to have a bit of a revival of this. Or is it happening, or is it just that there's a few good records out of that ilk? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
But I'd like it to happen.
There's a few good bands in London making that kind of music, like Blast Furnace and a pub band. I say they're a pub band. They do a lot of gigs. A band called Salt, and a good and I love R&B. I've tried to say on the Roundtable how much I thought it was coming back, but always been embarrassed because it never had.
Well, I might join you. We'll both be embarrassed.
We think of Johnny Guitar Watson in a disco vein, but you're quite right. That's not really that related to disco music, is it?
I didn't think so at all. No.
Rory?
I love this record myself, but he's gone through two generations. Some of us remember him as Johnny Guitar Watson, as he's called here, and then they call him Johnny Wah-Wah Watson as well.
Oh, yeah.
So for the last couple of albums. But I'm delighted that he's making a living and is successful and so on. But if this could be a hit with the disco fans, that could really help things a bit.
Sure, yeah.
I'd love to hear a lot more of this kind of music myself.
What about R&B? What about the band that Anne mentioned, which are fairly hot at the moment and which impressed everybody who saw them on their visit over here? That's George Thorogood and his Destroyers.
Yeah, I've got both of his albums. He's very good, and it's the odd thing. People were sort of, I mean, he's doing Elmore James music and just straightforward, middle of the line rhythm and blues, but some people sort of saw it as a new form of punk and so on. But I don't know. It's
what?
Yeah, well, some of the journalists were just getting a little bit
carried away,
making excuses for why he should be good and acceptable, which is daft. I mean, if it's just good earthy blues, it's you just can't cancel it out. It's got to be there, But
having spoken to you and known you for these years, your obviously main music influence and first love must be blues.
Yeah.
And you kind of exploded onto the scene with taste, as it were, at the back end of the big British blues boom, as it was in the late 60s. I love those days. I thought they were really good days. I'd love to come because it was honest music and without the pretense or vulgarities or posing usually associated with some of the stuff that we know today,
Well, times have to move on, of course, but, it's just that there's just so much of a synthetic thing nowadays and so much pre-packaging and assuming what people will like, which is the essence of pop music, if you like. But sometimes it gets to the point where someone like myself, you just go crazy some nights and you just run off and stay up all night and play all the music that just rarely gets played. And but with this record now and George Thorogood and the Feel Goods and people like that, I think it'll resurface, but not in a nostalgic way like rock and roll revivals or blues revivals, but as a valid, up-to-date music. Call it whatever you want.
Sure. It'd be good. Moving on to something very different. This is Boston on Epic, a new single from them called A Man I'll Never Be. Well, it's a long way from the R&B blues scene we were talking about a few moments ago, Boston. And I guess if you had to classify that, it would be in kind of an orchestrated rock section, wouldn't it? That was called A Man I'll Never Be. Rory?
Yeah. Well, I like the sort of classical guitar bit at the end, or that sort of heavy cello line on a guitar. The rest of the song didn't do that much for me, but it's a bit too much of an overproduction for my taste. But it's well played, and had they introduced the end part a little bit at the start, it probably would help it be a hit. But it might be a hit anyway in America because they're a huge.
Are they
over there? Oh yeah,
big in the States, are they? Yeah. Paul Gambaccini recently came back from New York. In fact, he's going to be doing his first show back from the States tomorrow afternoon, the American Chart Show, and he was saying how much American radio is dominated by disco music these days. So I was wondering where Boston sort of feature in that format.
Well, you have, Foreigner, Boston, Heart, a couple of those sort of formula rock bands. It's a bad term, but that's how you best describe it. They do still have big records, and they still sell out a lot of concerts. But Boston, because of the last record, the funny thing about that is that they gave a demo to Columbia Records or whoever, and they said, yeah, we love it, we'll sign you up, but you've got to go away and remake the album at our studios. So they went away and spent months at it, and it didn't sound half as good. So they went back and used the tapes from their own home studio, Tom Schlotz, whatever, that's his name.
Yeah.
And they ended up using the demo tape, and the new album was also done in his basement.
Right.
But of course, there's probably a basement with 48 tracks in it now.
Some basement.
Yeah, exactly. Annie, what did you think?
Well, I'm very wary of people like Boston, because I think it's such seductively pretty music. I kind of back away. I think, no, it seems to appeal to all the kind of base, sentimental aspects of anybody, and I'm awfully wary of it. I just don't like being taken over and swamped by all that. It is schmaltz. I don't think you can get away from the fact it's schmaltz, and I think that's what's dominating American music at the moment. I think it's a terrible shame. I mean, you just look at their charts compared with ours. I'm going to get very nationalistic now, because I think that we've turned out some very good people who are being totally ignored there. And if it had been the 60s, anybody after the Beatles was accepted and embraced by the American public and the radio stations. But from all I hear, and I haven't been there since last year, admittedly, but it's reflected in the charts that there's very little of the quirky things. They don't seem to accept our kind of nonsense that we have. I mean, I'd be very interested to see, I definitely want to see Rhythm Stick happening in America. I think it's one of the few that could get away there, because it's got enough to carry it. Maybe it's a sort of disco record. I know I'm getting away from Boston, but in a sense it's the same point, that I'm very worried by this honeyed attitude that they seem to have. And I've heard from people that the program directors are terrified of programming anything that's not safe, and I think it's very unhealthy. And I think Boston's part of it.
Yeah, I would go along. I think that we have a better music scene creatively over here, but at the same time, I like Boston's first single, More Than a Feeling, but that left me a little cold. I didn't see much in it. But they do have their fans here. So they're sort of like Uriah Heep have fans, and they're sort of in the same kind of progression from the heavy metal days in a way. I think Boston are more refined.
Do you? I would have thought. I was just thinking when you said. I was thinking probably the Moody Blues fans of the 60s would probably like Boston now.
Maybe. The Undertones offering us something a little more aggressive. They're from Londonderry, and we hope to have them on the Roundtable in a few weeks' time. I look forward to meeting them, because I enjoyed their last single very much. This is their second. It's called Get Over You. In the north of Ireland, Undertones and Get Over You. That was played exclusively on the Peely program last night. Annie, what did you think?
I think it's very nice. It has all the energy that Boston didn't have in a way. And I think, music has sort of had a rebirth. Oh, God, it sounds pretentious. But, yes, it was very nice. But actually, in a funny way, very, very reminiscent of 60s beat groups.
Yes.
Somehow. I can't put it's the first time I've heard it. So I can't actually yet define which one it reminded me of particularly, but Rory was saying maybe Beatles, and I think he's probably right.
Ah, interesting.
Well, more like a Mersey beat record, or not quite the big three, but which the big three were the greatest of all the Mersey beat groups. But you see, this is the odd thing that I can't put together in my head. On one hand, I mean, I'd love the Undertones to make it because it sounds okay, and they're from the mainland, as they say, but. It's very hard to actually sort of, even the lyrics, it could very well be the Mersey Beats, or it could be Casey Jones and the Undertakers, or Jackie Lomax, a lot of good people there. So, I mean, if it if it sounds a bit like that, it's fine with me, you know. It's as long as some guy doesn't come out in the paper and say this thing is the new
oh yes,
electronic intellectual spasm for your ulterior being or something. I mean, it's just rock and roll, but there you go.
All right.
It's all right.
I hope. I'd like to say I think their other single, which was Teenage Kicks, released only a few months ago, should have been a hit. That was such an obvious hit record to me. But I was wrong again, as I often am, and I think that's actually going to do it for them. I think they're getting a name for themselves, and I liked it. Undertones, and that was called Get Over You. We've got time to get one more in before the news. This is Rolls Royce, and I'm in love, and I love the feeling. Sounded a little bit like Curtis Mayfield to me. I'm in love, and I love the feeling, that particular track taken from their recent album release. What did you think, Rory?
It's okay, nothing... music to shave by, no real soul there, really. It's a soul record without soul, but they're a big success in the States, so it might be a hit here, you know, but nothing for me. It's
a point I'd like to come back to with you a little later, because I was reading in an article in Melody Maker you did a few months ago about your appreciation of music these days, or not, as the case may be. Annie, in a sentence?
Not as good as Love Don't Live Here Anymore, which I thought was one of the best records of last year. Actually.
I think I'll have to agree. This is Radio 1 at 6:30, and I'll be back with Rory Gallagher and Ann Nightingale on the Roundtable after this.
Radio 1, Roundtable.
This is Gene Simmons on Casablanca Records with Radioactive.
You're my food, you're my water. You've got to be the devil starter.
Gene Simmons, who is one-fourth of a very popular band in America known as Kiss. That never really happened here. I shouldn't use past tense because they're still together. They still might happen. That was Radioactive, and all four members of Kiss have released solo works, albums, and singles recently. We've been playing Ace Frehley's New York Groove on the radio, and this is the second one up from him. And Annie, I'll go to you first and ask you if it made any kind of impression.
Yeah. I've had this sort of anathema feeling about Kiss for a long time. Not very keen, you see, but I do think that separately they're much better than together. I think they should stay apart and stay pretty... I mean, I thought it was so over the top when they all put out solo albums together and all this immense packaging. And really sort of terribly ostentatious. But that's not bad, actually. I mean, it's a bit Steve Miller-ish, in a way, I thought, which is... I mean that as a compliment. And wasn't bad.
Okay.
So, I'm laughing because I didn't think I'd like it.
Do you think Gene Simmons is chart-bound then, over here?
Oh, could be, yes.
Not really?
Yes, could be. Mildly.
Okay. Got a kind of a good lukewarm reaction there. What about you, Rory?
I spilled my coffee. No, it was... I don't know. I hadn't heard the other solo albums at all.
No.
This is the first solo thing I heard. It's all right, but it's squeezes much pumped rock and roll, compressed rock and roll into 2.5 minutes. I hate to be eternally sarcastic about all the records, but I don't know, it's forgettable. But on the other hand, you know, radioactive over and over. But it sounds hackneyed now because radio Costello's had out lots of sort of, you know, kind of telephone wire type lyrics have been a little bit out of date now, but like Annie says, it's a bit of a Steve Miller type of feel, so it might just creep in, you know, particularly if he comes over and pushes it with a bit of PR, you know.
It's the sort of record I don't personally take to heart. I don't know why I don't, but I don't like it very much. Interestingly, Bob Seger actually appears on that particular single as he does on another track on the Gene Simmons solo album, and this is quite coincidental, honestly. We have next Bob Seger and his recent release on Capitol Records called We've Got Tonight. And a song called We've Got Tonight. This is the Radio 1 Roundtable, and we're reviewing the week's new records. We being Annie Nightingale and Rory Gallagher. Rory, I'll go to you and ask you about that single, if it kind of hit you in the right spot or not.
Well, I'm a Bob Seger fan. I like a lot of his things. This is okay, but if you extracted the orchestra and left the bare bones, a bit more of a Ray Charles type thing.
Oh, yeah.
I would have preferred it, but it's the obvious pop tune on the album. But there are one or two other songs that I would have preferred. That Still the Same was better, or the Frankie Miller song was better. But I'm bone picking. But it's and I don't like lush orchestras behind soul songs like that, or ballads, whatever you call it. It's okay though, and I hope it's a hit.
It's amazing how he's kind of come of age, hasn't he, after many, many years of playing heavy music, if you like.
Yeah.
There's this Bob Seger system and those bands around Detroit that he
Great
had.
band. Yeah, I saw him with the Silver Bullet Band in San Francisco. We were on the same bill, actually. Terrified the life out of us before we went on, but they were great. And he does a great version of Nutbush City, as you know. And, a few other things. But I think he's always had a soft spot for the odd little ballad, but maybe they feel after the last... although the last single was Night Moves, wasn't it?
Yes, it was re-released, actually, here a few times.
Wasn't there something since then?
There was something since then called... that nobody played very much. Hollywood Nights.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
that's a single.
Very nice.
That should have made it. I prefer that
That's
to this.
better, yeah.
What did you think, Annie?
Well, I'm going to sound terribly hypocritical and two-faced now because having sort of not seductively pretty music of Boston, I love this, and I don't really know why I dislike Boston as much as I like this, except the first time I played this was New Year's Eve, and it fitted, the words fitted, let's sort of, never mind about tomorrow, let's have a good time tonight, and I was really into that feeling at the time. And unfortunately, in a way, those things stick with you, and once you've liked it the first time or felt emotionally carried away by it, you always stay feeling the same way. And so I'm afraid I love it.
It's a nice lyric. Good. Bob Seger, I can't see it making the charts. I'd like to see it do because he's done a lot of good music. This is a band called The Doll, who last night appeared on Top of the Pops, and they've got a new double single release. It's in a colored sleeve. It's 245 records. They're a new band. They're fronted by a striking lady called Marion Valentino, and they appear on the Beggar's Banquet label, which is the home of the Lurkers. Anyway, from The Doll, this is called Desire Me. The Doll and Desire Me. Did you desire that record? Would you desire that record, Rory? Would you go and buy that record?
I'm afraid not. I'd say I'm afraid because I know the publisher, and no, it's Blondie-ish, but it's already a little bit dated. But there's no such thing as dated these days because you can never tell what's going to take off, But there again, I didn't see them on Top of the Pops. So if the act is good and so on, you'd never know. But it didn't really do it for me, as I say.
Right. We can obviously draw a parallel line, if you like, with Blondie. I mean, that's the most obvious comparison. They probably hate it, but I think it's inevitable, isn't it, Annie?
I suppose so. I think it's just such an obvious rip-off. I can't believe anybody could be, be so thick-skinned as to do a thing like this. I think it's amazingly sort of... Well, it's just so blatant. I really dislike it, I'm afraid. And also, if you're going to line yourself up with Debbie Harry, you've got to do rather well, and without sounding sort of nasty about it. I think it's awful, and I think it's a terrible effrontery to do something as it's insulting the public. We've all heard Blondie, know what that sound is. To come up with something totally the same and try and get away with it, I think it's pathetic.
Have you heard this before, this record?
I saw it on Top of the Pops.
Oh, you did?
Hmm.
And it didn't make an impression on you then?
No.
So you've heard it at least twice, because I was going to say, maybe in its defense, after a few listenings to it kind of catches you. I think, obviously, the Blondie comparison must be made. Having said that, though, I actually think that is going to be a hit. I think it is catchy enough to make it.
Oh, possibly, but I just don't like people who copy people.
Yeah, there's a lot of that about.
Yeah, but I mean, so blatant. I mean, try and, to be a little bit more subtle about it, you know.
I mean, how many Johnny Rotten vocalists have we got, in the country
And
now,
Bruce Springsteen, and,
Sure.
yeah, I
That's
agree. Right. But I think that they do try a little harder to get away from that. I just don't know what they're playing at. It probably will be a hit, but that doesn't alter my opinion at all.
I hope you're happier with the next record. This is on the Mountain label, and it's from a band who, again, like Rory, we haven't heard from in some time. Nazareth. This is called May the Sun Shine. That's the current Paul Burnett record of the week from Nazareth and Made the Sunshine. I don't know about you, Annie. When that record started, it was almost, we were talking about people taking off other people. And I'm sure that it wasn't deliberate. It sounded a bit like Rory Gallagher right at the beginning there. What did you think of the single in...
Well, we have to ask him what he thought about that aspect of it.
All right, we'll go to Rory.
Well, I can't comment on that bit. I mean, it's
just the very beginning.
Are you going to sue or not?
I'm going to sue, definitely.
Actually, Nazareth has been augmented by a really talented guy, of course, former Alex Harvey man,
Zal Clemenson, yeah. And, of course, the current drummer was... come again.
Your drummer?
Yes, of course. My drummer, Ted McKenna, and Zal were together in Alex Harvey's band. So I think Zal will really give Nazareth the... an extra lease of life and so on. And it's hard to tell from that record whether it's really been wafted in properly and used, because I don't know who played the lead guitar there or who was playing what. I thought it's definitely a single. It's not an album track, and it could have been a shade shorter. And I mean, for me to say that is like,
yes, right,
bad news. But I mean, I think if they were going for the hard to the point effect, of that all in it together type. But I think that they deserve another, peak or whatever the word. And I think people would be ready for them when they come back and tour and so on. And I hope it's a hit.
Oh, sure. Yeah, good. Zal Clemenson, as you said, very talented guy, and he was such a star with the Alex Harvey band. Interesting, I just want to make one point, because you said how the inclusion of Zal in Nazareth, now they are 5, if you like, it will sort of expand their sound, and you've done the reverse, because you're now a trio, aren't you, from being a band before. What was your reason for bringing yourself down to a trio again?
Well, after 5 years or something with keyboards, it was great fun, and it was a necessary experiment and so on. But I had a choice then. During the year, I just got this feeling that I wanted to change, and a new feel, a new beat. And you can either expand and get, another guitarist, another keyboards, or brass and God knows what. But I just had this longing to go back to 3 for a while and just enjoy the kind of the brass knuckle sound you get with 3. And it's not as limiting as people often think. You can do a lot with 3, and I'm really enjoying the 3-piece now again.
Good. Okay. Annie, briefly, Nazareth.
Yes, I think that's lovely.
Good.
And lots of energy in it and excitement. Yeah, smashing. I'm glad they've done something like that.
We're about to hear the #1 disco sound in America. Up to now, it's been a big import seller over here. From Edwin Starr, this is called Contact. Edwin Starr, and that's Contact. Did he make contact? I wonder. Annie.
Oh, Edwin Starr. Oh, dear. It's like really his sellout time, it appears to me, when all those great records they used to make. It just... I suppose that he has to make a living, and, and he's sort of pressured into doing things like this. And I mean, that's #1 in America. Well,
in the disco chart, not in the overall.
Well, I hope it isn't #1 in... I don't know what's #1 on our disco chart at the moment. I really don't know, but it's just so boring.
Yeah.
So it went on and on and on and didn't get anywhere. No, sorry.
Rory, you're nodding aside. It looks like you kind of sympathize with Annie's sentiment there.
Well, I used to stop her on site and SOS.
Sort of
Even War was sort of jumped out.
Well, those were the days where you could still hear the snare drum and the drummer sweating, but no, you're never too sure whether somebody just switched on the automat beat and the coffee machine and the bongos, and it's easy to sound stupidly kind of holier than thou about it, but it's I don't know. It's just, I'm beginning to worry.
At the risk of misquoting and maybe embarrassing you, from the article that I mentioned before that I read with you in MM, because there hasn't been a lot about you in the press recently, you mentioned the 2 things that you'd like to see done away with, disco and disco records and bingo. I mean, do you still feel the same? Is that...
Yeah. Dingo?
Yes.
Well, I mean, it came across a little heavy-handed, like I was sort of, the new master of the universe, and I was going to get rid of this and that. But, no, I mean, too much bingo and too much disco is...
bad for the soul?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you eventually get to the point... I mean, disco's fine if you go in with a few drinks and you wobble around the floor. So somebody could have leveled that at rock and roll years ago, or people. I mean, there's nothing wrong with people having a good game of bingo, but it's just. Well, what I was trying to really hint at is that a lot of the old clubs where groups used to play are now bingo halls, and even old cinemas are now bingo halls.
Yeah, that's true enough.
And it's a bit, just a sign of the times or something. I don't know. I sound like someone from the Liberal Party of 1923 at the present moment.
Here's something to cheer you up, because it's an old mate of yours, Gary Moore, is on MCA Records now. He's also with Thin Lizzy back there again, of course, but he's got a solo album called Back on the Streets, and he's had some help with Phil Lynott on the album. In fact, this is a Phil Lynott composition called Don't Believe a Word. Sort of faded out at the wrong time for me there. It should have been a lot longer. Gary Moore from Back on the Streets again. I obviously like it. Phil Lynott wrote it. He actually appears on the track. You may have heard him. In fact, you may have seen them all on the whistle test last night with Annie, but it's going to be repeated if anybody missed it on
last
Sunday.
Night. Tuesday.
No, Tuesday night.
Tuesday. No, you're getting confused.
I know I am.
Be repeated on Sunday afternoon.
Sunday afternoon. What did you think?
Well, I liked it. I think it works very well. It's so nice to hear that song down to a different tempo. And the words really are nice. And really nice guitar playing, and it's very nice, because it was sort of awkward actually with I felt that Phil was trying desperately to keep in the background, but he's sort of natural exuberance. I mean, I suppose I'm talking about Whistle Test, and I don't know if that applies so much to the actual track. But he was trying very much to not like nick Gary's limelight.
Yeah.
And yet he's sort of so can't help moving about a lot and shimmering, but I think it. I don't know. I think it came off very well. I do like this track very much. Yeah.
It sounds very much like something that Gary... No, actually, Gary didn't appear on the track Slid in Love with You originally on the album Nightlife. That was Brian Robertson and Scott Gorham. But it was very much the same sort of treatment of that track, wasn't it?
Yeah. This is... well, the nice thing about this is it's a nice production. It's a nice instruments sound like instruments. I mean, you can hear the drums and you can hear the... nice... It's just a nice sound. I think the arrangement, though, is slightly nicked from Otis Rush's All Your Love, which John Mayall and Clapton did on the
Which
blues.
Gary will be familiar with, because he likes it.
Oh, yeah, but that's no great sin in that. I mean, that's fair enough. And it's nice. Is it a single, or is it just an album?
No, just an album track from what I think is a very, very good album called Back on the Streets.
Well, I think they could have stuck, like you said, another 60 seconds of the raunchy bit at the end would have done any harm. But, there you go. Maybe it's best to leave the people wanting a little bit, It's nice, though. Yeah.
Good. Glad you enjoyed that. 6 minutes after 7, Roundtable time, and here is a new band. They're called The Pretenders, featuring Chrissy Hind, who is the vocalist. And this is an old Kinks song called Stop Your Sobbing.
It is time for you to stop all of the sobbing.
That was Stop Your Sobbing. We've been talking throughout tonight's show, in fact, about early influences and records sounding like other records. Well, that was, of course, an old Kinks song, and let's remind ourselves of what the original actually sounded like.
It is time for you to stop all of your sobbing. Yes, it's time for you to stop all of your sobbing. Stop your sobbing now.
An odd track, I would have thought, to pick up on, not one that I was familiar with, a bit of an obscure Kinks track, that, for me anyway. That was the original version. Before it, we heard in full Pretenders, and a song produced by Nick Lowe, whose Midas touch has graced many an artist of late. That was Stop Your Sobbing. Rory, did it stop your sobbing? Did it do anything for you at all?
Well, I remember the Kinks record a little bit, but you could sound kind of a bit full of yourself and say, well, they should have picked I'm Not Like Everybody Else, or one of the other great B-sides from the Kinks. I think it was I hate to say Blondie again, but it's a little bit in that sort of vogue, but it's all right. But there are better songs to pick from the Kinks songbook, but it's all right. It's not bad.
Okay, Annie.
I thought it sounded like Sandy Shaw.
Now, whatever happened to Sandy Shaw?
I keep bumping into her down Regent Street, actually.
Really? What is she doing now?
Well, I don't know, her old man, you see, is in the rag trade.
Oh, yes,
and,
of course, Jeff Banks.
So, but I actually liked it. I don't think Nick Lowe can do anything wrong, actually.
No.
I'm afraid I'm rather of that persuasion. I thought it was rather good.
He's actually the sort of guy, when you see his name on a record, you think, well, I wasn't too sure about that. But then when you see produced by Nick Lowe, you think, well, maybe it has something. Because he doesn't tend to involve himself in things that aren't.
No, I liked it a lot.
Yeah. Okay, Pretenders, and we wish them luck. A brand new band, as I said, fronted by Chrissie Hynde, who is an American songstress, and the rest of the fellows in the band, the other three, are English. Here's a little reggae from Jimmy Cliff on Warner Brothers. This is called Stand Up and Fight Back. Jimmy Cliff, that was called Stand Up and Fight Back, and it's been a while since we heard from Jimmy Cliff. He was really one of the forerunners of the modern-day reggae, but has, in a way, been sort of left behind in the wake of dreadlocks and things. And reggae enthusiasts like us R&B fans are always saying, well, this is the year that reggae is going to happen, and it didn't happen last year, maybe this year. And certainly the influence is being felt through rock records around at the moment. I wonder if you enjoyed that performance by Jimmy Cliff, Rory.
Yeah, I liked it, and I liked the studio sound, and it was happy and unassuming, and it just got, you know, it was easy music for anyone to take, but by the same token, you could just, you know, it had a bite. You could hear everything clicking along, the drums and the bass and the voice. I mean, it was I mean, as under the single system, it was just right, and I hope he gets a little bit of a hit with it, because, like you say, he's been slightly, you know, glossed over and forgotten about since The Harder They Come and a few other things.
Yeah.
But this is good. Yeah.
Has reggae at any time been an influence on you, or anything that you've enjoyed?
Yeah, I enjoy it. I mean, I really don't think there will ever be a year of reggae, because you always have, every year is a sort of a mini year of reggae, whether it's Bob Marley or Peter Tosh or somebody. Yeah. And I don't think it's a bad thing if it stays, you know, in that sort of little road, you know. And but I enjoy it. I couldn't listen to reggae night after night like some people, but I have a couple of reggae records, and I enjoy it. You know, particularly the more primitive the sound in the studio, the more I like it. I'm sorry to say, but
I'm sure the purists would hate it if it became popular anyway. You know.
Yes, I agree. They will. They'll absolutely loathe it, and they'll say it's sort of sellout. But it's so. As Rory said, it's so happy, and that lovely line about you've got nothing to lose. It's very joyous, and it's a real upper, and I love upper records, and I really, you know, I think it's going to do terribly well. It should do, deserves to do very, very well, and it's sort of, I mean, if records can change your mood, I think this one would. If I was feeling very miserable and down, or irritable or annoyed, I think that, you know, you put this on and you could not help but feel better. That's, you know, like I say.
That's good. Stevie Wonder has that effect, so if Jimmy Cliff can do that, then that's obviously a big asset for him. Stand up and fight back. He's a good guy, and I should just point out that our most enthusiast of reggae followers is right here on Radio 1, John Peel. He said to me a few weeks ago that it was the only music today that was really making him feel good, as a general, not just the Jimmy Cliff single, but as a general form of music. He said he gets
makes him feel good. Yeah.
Enjoyment out of it.
It does do that. It really does.
It's a very infectious sort of sound, isn't it? Now, we move on to the Lurkers, who are on Beggar's Banquet Records, and they've got quite a loyal following. I don't know if you've come across any of their fans like I have, Annie, doing gigs, around the kind of disco gigs. They've got a loyal, amazing, a lot of people who, for a band that haven't had chart success, are very well known. This could be the record that breaks it for them. This is called Just 13. From a band of Londoners called the Lurkers. That was a Pete Stride composition, who is one of the Lurkers, and that was Just 13. Annie.
I'm disappointed. I have to admit it, because I've liked their other things so much, and I thought this was about the time that they'd come up with the right one. I just don't think there's enough sort of sustained interest in this somehow. It really is monotonous. All you get is Just 13 all the way through. It doesn't build. It doesn't hold your attention enough. And I'm really sorry to say it because I wanted it to be good. You know, there are records and you put them on for the first time and think, ooh, good new luck, it's lovely. Oh, doesn't quite make it. And I mean, hopefully I'm wrong, but this is, you know, only and always a personal view. But I don't think it does.
Rory?
Well, you know, anything with a good straight-on rock and roll beat is a good start, but it's the old theme, just 13. It's just Alice Cooper, just 16 or just 18.
Just 12.
I mean, if you're going to go for the 13, you might as well really go for the really extreme lyrics and get yourself banned. You might have a real hit then. I mean, you know, it's. Yeah. And I mean that seriously. If you're going to actually write a song like that, you might as well really dig in deep, or do like Costello does. He kind of takes it from out of the, you know, the preconceived standard. You know, she's 13 and this, that, you know, and so forth. But I mean, to be honest, I'm not too familiar with the Lurker's previous stuff, so I don't know whether it's better or worse. But
it's not as good.
I don't think it's as good as a record that I picked up on as a record of the week a year ago called Ain't Got a Clue, which, again, I thought was so infectious, should have made the charts, but I think that it's, I don't know, I'd like to have liked it more. Now, to change the subject a little bit, because the Lurkers came out of a punk explosion, if you like, and that all happened sort of when you were away, didn't it, Rory? When you sort of went off to the States, and then sort of like the Sex Pistols appeared on the scene. I was wondering how you reacted, or still react today, to that whole new music.
Yeah.
Which is not really new, of course, but they're under a different guise, if you like.
Well, I was in and out and about, so I wasn't completely unaware of what, you know, the change and so on. And I saw some of the bands. I saw the Sex Pistols' last gig. Didn't see them really at their peak on the way up. I saw them in San Francisco, of all places. But that was the night of the great split. So, no, I mean, in general, I mean, I think the press read too many things into it. In general, it was just a good brute force return to a good aggressive beat, and people were getting... the younger musicians just wanted a rock and roll, and that's all it is, young rock and roll. Some of the bands are terrible. Some of them are exciting, but still terrible. Some of them are exciting and good.
It didn't have an obvious influence on you, because your hair is still, as people will remember it, from the Isle of Wight and Taste and all.
I'm sorry, but I don't know. It might come back into fashion. But
keeps your ears warm, doesn't it?
But I mean, I like some of the... I mean, I'd prefer to listen to a bad punk record than to a bland...
disco thing.
Yeah, or a bland sort of middle-of-the-road thing. But nevertheless, you know, the best people I find would be, say, Costello or the Pirates. But then describing the Pirates as new wave is ludicrous, because they were great in '62 and they're great now. Yeah. Who else? A bunch of other people. But in general, it's been a good movement. I just think it's been a little bit over intellectualized and analyzed and set up in a pulpit and so on. But that's always the problem with rock and roll. If they start trying to write the New Testament with it, it loses its point, you know.
Okay.
That's that well put, writing the New Testament with it.
Yeah, I like that.
Very nice, Rory.
Got away with it.
You can use it.
Thanks. Next week. Here come the Pointer Sisters from an album called Energy. This is a Bruce Springsteen song recorded recently by Robert Gordon. It's called Fire. The Pointer Sisters, and that's an album track, not a single, but just something that I thought you might like to hear from a new album release called Energy. And that, in fact, is a single in America, where it's number 19 in the charts. And one of the Pointer Sisters will be a guest on next week's Roundtable. Having said that, I want to ask my guest tonight what they thought of it. Annie Nightingale, first of all.
I like this a lot more than the current single from the Pointer Sisters. Yeah, I think it's lovely. I really do. I mean, Bruce Springsteen's obviously going to be one of the... Whatever happens to him, and everyone's saying this is his year, that having sorted out all these terrible problems he was having in management, that he's got to do it this year. But he's a wonderful artist for other artists to cover. I mean, so many people who have
Manfred Mann, chart-wise, of course.
Right, and you know, the songs obviously have so much in them for other people, which I think is a sign of a great artist. I thought that was lovely.
Rory.
Great. I think it should be the single here as well. It struck me more like a staple singer's arrangement.
Yes.
That sound, which, I mean, like a respect yourself type of thing. And even though I like Richard Gordon, or it's Robert Gordon, sorry, particularly because of his connection with Link Ray, who's the original head case guitar player. I heard his version of Fire, and it didn't strike me as what the doctor ordered. It was a studio job, but this is good, and I'd like it to be successful for them. You know.
Good. Rory, I would like to thank you for messing with the kid tonight. You're off to the Hammersmith Odeon for a gig.
Yeah.
Good luck tonight.
Thank you.
What time are you going to go on stage?
About 8:30, 8:45. Yeah.
You ready for it?
Oh, just about, yeah.
Oh.
A couple of Weetabix and I'll be fighting fit.
Thank you very much for coming along here, because it's maybe not such an easy thing before a major appearance in London, of course, to come down. You'll be with Bram Tchaikovsky tonight.
That's right.
With his new band. Good.
Uh-huh.
Annie, you doing anything special over the weekend?
I'll be here on Sunday afternoon, as ever.
I look forward to that.
Yeah.
I'm going to be in Wolverhampton tomorrow night. Radio 1 will be back at 10 o'clock through to 12 o'clock later tonight, because we're going to join up with Radio 2 in a moment. But I just must say that Tommy Vance will be playing some classic rock tracks with sessions from The Only Ones, A Good Band, and Stretch. Right now on Radio 1, wishing you a good weekend and inviting you to join me next week for another edition of Roundtable at 7:30.